Hello everybody, my name is Liam Doran and I'm going to give a brief overview of P6 as an option paper, just really to give people who might be considering to do P6 an idea as to whether it's a subject that they might or they might not like to get stuck into. The lecturer for P6 in Accountancy School is Sandra Gleeson, and as you'll find out if you start the course, P6 follows on from the F6 subject, and at the F6 level there are a number of tax heads that are covered, but they're covered from the perspective of the rules of the individual tax heads and your ability to do number crunching. So if you have a look at the slide here, you can see that at the F6 level, you've got income tax, corporation tax, capital gains tax, value added tax, and local property tax. And what would come up in a typical F6 exam question is calculate the income tax liability for an individual or calculate the corporation tax liability for a company. And that will involve you doing the calculations to be able to determine what the actual exposure to tax is. And then obviously in doing the calculations, you need to understand the rules. At the P6 level, it examines all of the content that comes up at F6. It throws on an extra 2 areas. You've got to be able to deal with capital acquisitions tax and stamp duty as well. But you'll notice, and I have it highlighted in red here, that with the P6, you need to be able to do all of the tax heads at an advanced level. Now, really what that means is you need to be able to give people advice. So it's not just about doing the calculations anymore. It's about the ability to do some tax planning. It's about the ability to take a scenario and to identify all of the tax exposures that somebody has. So you're told in a question, for example, that Johnny is thinking about liquidating his business. And in liquidating his business, he's going to transfer all of his assets to his brother-in-law. You need to consider, if I liquidate my business, I've got a capital gains tax exposure. If I transfer all of the assets free of charge to my brother-in-law, I'm giving my brother-in-law a gift. And that means that there's going to be capital acquisitions tax. There will most likely be stamp duty because in the transfer of the assets, we're going to have to stamp certain documents to transfer legal title. And that's going to give an exposure to stamp duty. There may be VAT. And the VAT will arise because when you sell something to somebody and if it comes under the VAT net, you need to charge value added tax. So it's important that you're able to interrelate a whole lot of different tax topics into any given scenario that might be presented in the exam. And then it's important that you're able to evaluate if there any method that we could utilize, legally obviously, is there any method that we could utilize to try and minimize our exposure to tax? And obviously you need to understand the rules there, but you need to understand the application of the rules and you need to be able to give advice. And that's the big thing about the P6 subject. The P6 subject is about you using the knowledge that you have to be able to give somebody advice in order to plan the tax exposures that they're going to have. And to plan the tax exposures in such a fashion that they pay the minimum amount of tax legally that they must pay. As regards the exam paper, the layout of the exam paper is that they split it into 2 sections, Section A and Section B. In Section A, you've got 2 compulsory questions. Question 1 is a 35 marker, and that includes 4 professional marks. Question 2 then is for 25 marks. In Section B, you've got 3 20-marker questions. You get a choice here. You've got to choose 2 from 3 in that section. Now, I suppose anybody looking at this, the real thing in the back of their mind is, should I be doing P6? A couple of the things that you need to take into consideration in making your final decision is, first of all, are you interested in tax? If you're not interested in tax, well then obviously tax is not a subject that you should be choosing as an option paper. Tax is an interesting topic. One thing that you will always find, as soon as somebody hears you're an accountant, invariably they've got a tax question. So tax it's a topical subject, it's an interesting subject, but it must be a case that you're interested in it. There's going to be a lot of calculations to it. If you don't like doing calculations, well then perhaps P6 isn't the subject for you. A lot of people wonder, do I need to be working in tax in order to be able to pass the tax exam? And the answer is no. I mean, many people are not working in accounts preparation, but they're able to pass P2. Or many people are not working in auditing, but they're able to pass F8. It's not essential that you work in tax. Obviously, there's a bit of an advantage if you do. But even for those people who work in tax, they might be working just in VAT or just in CT or just in CGT. And therefore, they wouldn't be getting exposure to the other tax heads that you need to be able to deal with on the P6 syllabus. Another thing worth your while asking is, did you do F6 or did you get an exemption? If you got an exemption, well, then you're basically said to the ACCA, I've covered in college all of the topics that come up on F6 and I'm comfortable with it. It's important that you did. It's important that you do have a basic level of knowledge coming from the F6 syllabus, because even though a lot of the topics on F6 are covered again, they're not covered in the same level of detail as they would be covered in an F6 exam. And in the course, Not everything from F6 is going to be covered again. There will be self-study required of you if it's a situation that it's a long time since you've covered F6 and you may need to get up to speed on some certain topics. As regards pass rates, tax tends to have the highest pass rate regularly. It didn't on the June 2016 sitting. P4 actually had the highest pass rate in June 2016, but it generally has a pretty high pass rate. Now, when I talk about a high pass rate, 40% is high, but in comparison to 30%, it's probably a good choice if you're looking at purely pass rates. As with all of the subjects, a willingness to study and to practice from day one is important. And because of the amount of calculations that you're going to have to deal with, because of having been able to interrelate different tax heads against each other in order to be able to give advice and to do an evaluation, the earlier you start practicing questions, the better. So the advice I'd give in any of the subjects is you need to have a willingness to put work in from the start in order to be comfortable that you are going to pass any given subject. And then I suppose the P6 course in accountancy school, as I mentioned already, Sandra Gleeson is the lecturer. It's very much exam focused. The objective here is that you pass an exam. There's a detailed weekly plan that's given out at the start of lectures. It'll be up on Moodle. There are progress tests posted on Moodle. It's important that you do the progress tests to see how you are progressing and to make sure that you're able to assimilate the knowledge and prove to yourself that you're assimilating the knowledge as you progress week to week, and therefore get to the revision course and hopefully be well prepared for the exam in December. Okay, if there's any further queries that you might have on P6 or you'd like to have a discussion surrounding whether or not it may be a subject for you, if you want to send me an email, my email address is liam.doran@accountancyschool.ie. And other than that, I'd like to wish you the best of luck in whatever decision you make. Thanks very much.